Hello everybody, I'm Mike, CTO and co-founder at Callstack, and before we move to our React Native Show podcast, I have a quick announcement to say that might be something that is interesting to you. Today I'm looking for the best React Native developers to join my team. Besides working on high-end software used by millions, we also contribute to open source projects such as React Native Paper, React Native Testing Library, or Repack. And so you will have an opportunity to develop your skills and knowledge within these projects, as well as move your own ideas into life by taking part in our R&D program. We are a great team full of React Native crazy people about this technology, and we can't wait to share our knowledge and experience with you. And so if this sounds like something exciting, don't wait anymore and join us. It's great to be part of such a team. Check out the link below and apply, and I'm hoping to see you soon in our Callstack office or maybe remotely depending on your location. Bye-bye.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the React Native Show in 2022. My name is Łukasz, and together with my guest Ola, we'll take you on the journey of the last year React Native news. During this episode, we'll summarize the good, the bad, and the hopes for the future. So stick around and let us know in the comments if you agree with our picks for these categories. With that being said, let me introduce my guest, Ola. Ola, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. So I invited you to this show today because just like me, I think you are a React Native freak, always happy to discuss latest news, always happy to experiment. So I thought it would be a good idea to have you on the show to do something here live for our audience.
And thank you so much for inviting me. This is a great honor.
So before we move on to the proper part of the episode, let me ask you one final introductory question. What do you think we have in common apart from liking React Native news?
Well, I know we both joined Callstack last year, so that's pretty exciting. And it's I know it's been great. I joined in September, but actually Callstack was very they helped me a lot when I was being hired, because I started my recruitment process in March. But I told them that I can only join in September, and they were happy to accommodate all my needs, which was really great. And ever since I started, it's just better and better. How about you?
Yeah, I joined in June, and I had a great journey as well. I was in the recruitment process for 2 months probably, and it was great. So when was the first time in your developer career when you first heard about the Callstack company?
Well, as soon as I got interested in React Native apps, I heard about Callstack. Callstack is one of the most important players in the React Native world. So immediately, I'm pretty active on Twitter. So immediately I saw Mike's tweets. I realized that he's a core contributor to React Native, and that he's a CTO and Callstack. So I was like, wow, this company must be crazy great. And then I learned about the React Native EU conference, and I was just super impressed.
You gave two talks on two conferences, right? This year and last year as well.
Yes. I was lucky enough to give 2 talks. Yeah.
Yeah, so after this episode, go and watch Ola's talks from React Native EU. First time I heard about Callstack was also I noticed some contributions from Polish guys on some open source repositories, and there was a lot of Polish people,
Yeah,
a lot of Polish people contributing to these open source repositories. And that's how I found out that we have really big companies here in Poland that are actively contributing. So then I found out who Mike is, and I found out who Satya is, and Pavel. And I
they're
was
all
really
here.
and they're all here. They're all in this company.
Yeah.
And I was really excited when I got contacted by Mike last year, and of course I said, don't try to sell me this company. I already heard about you, of course, and I'm
I
really
had the
eager
same
to join.
experience. I had the same experience. I got the
Yeah,
first contact, and I was like, "Yeah, you don't need to explain. I know who you are."
yeah. So, what would be your advice to people wanting to join Callstack? What would be an advice from you to other young developers trying to join a great company?
I would say just folks go ahead and send in your CVs because there are a lot of open roles. There are junior roles, medium roles, senior roles, and yeah, especially if you're a junior, Callstack does a great job creating a great pathway for you to get from junior to senior. So really, just go ahead, don't be shy, and send in your CVs. It's really worth it to try and work
Yeah,
here.
it's really important to learn from the best in your field and
Yeah,
to sit next to like great open source contributors, and maybe you can contribute to open source yourselves.
exactly.
Uh, okay, thanks. And I think we're done with our introduction. With me, I'm Łukasz. This is Ola. We are your host today, and let's move on to our main course for this podcast, which is, over the past few weeks, I conducted several interviews with people here at Callstack, and I asked everyone the same set of questions. I asked them, I recorded some answers, and maybe we can take a look at the mashup of the interviews I did, and then we can discuss some more.
Yeah,
Let's
let's
roll
do
the
that.
clip. Hello, Kuba. Hello, Michel. Talia. Hello, Michał. Hello, Janek. Hello, Mateusz. Thanks for taking the time to do this call with me. As you know, I'm gathering feedback about what happened in React Native in 2021, and I'm really interested in your opinion about it. So, my first question for you today is, what was the most groundbreaking moment, in your opinion, for React Native in 2021?
I would say it's the stabilizing of Reanimated 2 on the JSI bindings, creating worklets, and the whole abstractions around it.
Hermes for iOS.
Well, this might be just groundbreaking for me, React Native wise, but I'm glad I joined Callstack this year.
Personally, I think one of the most groundbreaking things for me was being in the React Native podcast. It was my first time. It was a bit nerve-wracking, but really awesome. In the overall ecosystem, I think the greatest thing was that many companies started to use React Native in their apps, like Coinbase.
Hermes working in both platforms, Android and iOS.
This year was really crazy. There was a lot of awesome projects released like Reanimated 2 or Gesture Handler, but overall I think this year was completely dominated by JSI and Turbo modules.
My second question to you is, which React Native library was the most useful last year?
I think Expo was the most useful library for me. If I was starting to learn programming or mobile development, this would be a really great choice.
For me, probably everything related to performance measuring. Some Flipper plugins, why did you render library, React DevTools, and console log API.
That's an easy pick. I would say React Navigation.
I would say React Navigation was the most useful.
React Navigation is so ubiquitous. Every developer I know uses it.
React navigation always has been.
Yeah, most definitely. I think that's the most common answer that we have. The third and the last question I have for you is, what are you looking forward to seeing in 2022 React Native wise?
I would say the nightly releases, the new releases with bug fixes, then also Zamatani's work on web repack.
For sure, module federation in React Native thanks to Repack, which means fancy code splitting and remote code loading.
I'm looking forward to stabilizing the new architecture. So GSI is pretty stable at the moment. Fabric is there in the React Native core, but there's no much material, no use cases for how to use it, how to convert your library, how to leverage the new architecture. So I'm looking forward into adoption of the synchronous architecture for React Native, and I believe this is going to be a biggest deal to React Native since it started.
New architecture, of course. I think everyone in the React Native space is waiting for it, and we now have docs, and more open source libraries will adopt it.
From my perspective, the finalization of the new architecture and migrating the existing libraries and projects to this new architecture.
Oh, I think we are all waiting for the same on the like the final release of Fabric and general migration of libraries to Turbo modules. But probably when you will ask me this first question next year, it will be something completely different.
Thank you so much for joining me. That went very well. Thanks again for participation in this small Callstack survey, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the office next year.
Great, yay! Thank you,
Thanks.
everybody, for the answers.
Yeah, thank you everybody, everyone who gave us their answer in a survey and who was kind enough to allow me record my interviews with them. That went really well. Like I said, that went really well.
Yeah.
So, what is your opinion overall about the whole set of questions and the whole set of answers?
I think we can go like one after another. So if we start with the first one, your first question was what was the most important thing in React in the last year? So everybody spoke about Hermes, I think. Everybody, somebody mentioned Hermes, which is something that I feel was super important. Like having this dedicated engine is a game changer for React Native apps. What would be your answer? What do you think?
The Hermes one is really, really important. And I remember, like it was today, it was 10 months ago in March last year. Mike wrote a blog post. Mike, our CDO, Mike Grabowski, who is a contributor to the React Native core. He wrote a blog post announcing React Native 064, I think. Yeah, it's 064. And he announced a huge amount of work that he did on bringing Hermes to iOS. So I was really hyped back then. I was really excited that the engine that we heard so much about over the previous year, about like performance in Android and startup time, that we can finally use it on iOS. It was a huge news. But I feel that now it's 10 months later, and from the top of my head, I wouldn't pick Hermes for iOS just because it was 10 months ago. And like time flies so fast in React Native world. So what I would pick actually was also something that someone mentioned during the recording. It's Repack. I think it's Repack. I think Repack can be a real, maybe not game changer per se. Like most developer would still use Metro, but for some edge cases, for some more challenging challenges, you could use Webpack and you can leverage the like whole Webpack ecosystem in React Native. And I played around with it in August, I think, and I got to do some small contribution.
Nice.
And yeah, it was a documentation thing. So
Yeah, but still,
don't
it
sweat.
counts. GitHub counted your little square, so you're fine.
Yeah. So right, I really encourage everyone to go ahead and check Repack. So what we have already, we have Hermes on iOS, we have Repack. What else were people talking about?
Well, Jan mentioned that Coinbase adopted React Native, and I think that that's not really like that. That doesn't touch the code or the development, but I think it's important when big companies talk about using React Native. And also on this topic, I remember at the last React Native EU conference, there was a talk by Joshua Gross from Facebook, and he spoke about how React Native was used in the Facebook app. And as Jan mentioned, now Coinbase talks about adopting it, so that raises the confidence that people who are looking into adopting React Native will have.
Yeah, definitely. And on the same topic about like companies adopting React Native, I think it was a huge news that Microsoft is putting money where their mouth is, and they're adopting React Native in a lot of their products, like
definitely.
Office on iOS, Office on Android. They use React Native internally. So there was an also talk about it on our conference, about their like monorepo system, how they solve the challenges of using the same snippets of codes in many of their products. It is really interesting.
So it's a great talk.
Yeah, and like Microsoft also is maintaining and is like probably a biggest contributor to not only React Native Windows, but also React Native macOS, which I think just shows their commitment and the impact that they can do. So right now we have this two huge, like one of the biggest companies in the world, Meta, like old Facebook, Meta, and Microsoft collaborating to work on React Native. So I think this is one of the biggest achievements from this year in React Native space.
Yeah, that's definitely something that is important in this space.
And also something you already mentioned 2 minutes ago, talk from Joshua about Facebook, about Facebook app and React Native in it.
Yeah.
So
and Fabric.
yeah, I was going to bridge to Fabric. So actually, to bridge to no bridge Fabric. Actually, we've been hearing about new architecture for like 3 years now.
That's true.
And this is like a constant story. It's coming. It's in the works. It's coming. Get excited about it. And everyone was excited. So maybe let's come back to what you just said 2 minutes ago about Joshua's talks about Facebook and Facebook implementing the new architecture inside their application. So what do you remember from that talk?
I remember he talked a lot about using Fabric, and he went into detail, and he mentioned all those surfaces. I actually remember that he used the word surface instead of screen, and I thought it was really cute. And I think we should all use surface instead of screen.
Yeah.
And it's just great that he can share so many details on their implementation. It's something we can all learn a lot from.
Yeah, definitely. And also like those debugging the edge cases stuff, it was really informative for me. Just to see that very experienced developers, very like top developers in the world, in the React Native space at least, if not the whole development world, they also struggle with like weird edge cases that takes them weeks and months to finally close. So that was really informative for me.
Yeah, that's cool. We're all humans. It's like, did you watch the mock interview that Dan Abramov did with
I did.
what's his name?
Ben Awad.
Ben Awad, yeah. And there's the Benawat asks to center a div, and I just love that part. I was like, yay, Dan Abramov is the human, like all of us. He cannot center a div. It takes him
Like
15 minutes.
this, I feel like this centering a div thing is so popular. So like in every program, maybe not every programming meme, but in most of the programming memes, you have to like center a div, and I feel it's really easy. But like other thing from that mock interview from Dan Abramov is that he made a mistake, and I cut the mistake. I caught it.
Really?
Yeah. What
what
was it? He didn't do like the exit clause in the recursive algorithm for reversing binary tree.
Yeah, the tree.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I feel the algorithm would crash. But
you should like tweet about it. I wonder
yeah. What happened last year? I started using Twitter. I have like officially probably 5 tweets. Like I have 5 tweets, and not all of them are retweets. So that's good.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, I follow you, and I will try to do more of tweeting next year.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm following you too, but since you don't tweet much, you have to tweet more.
Cool. Let's move on. So are we done with the first question? So just to recap, first question was, what do you think was the most groundbreaking moment in React Native in 2021? So let's just recap. We had 3 releases of React Native. Not much, not low number, I think. 064, 065, 066.
That's a good number for like a healthy, active framework, you know. It's like...
Yeah, definitely. And that was something that I was going to mention, that apart from Hermes for iOS, we didn't get much breaking stuff, much like groundbreaking stuff, let's say.
Yeah, but also upgrade breaking stuff.
Yeah, definitely. What else? We have a bigger commitment from Meta to communicate changes to developer, and we've seen this with the latest release, 066. They announced the release. Before they released it, they announced what is going to break. So basically. You can prepare your app for that.
That's true. There also the discussions thread is pretty active on GitHub. Like everybody can start a discussion about any issue with React Native that they may have, any ideas, and anything that's worth exploring. There's always answers from core contributors, and the discussions are pretty lively. So I also recommend that for anybody who is interested in working with React Native to look into those discussions and read what people have to say.
Yeah, of course. It's a very good like an exercise to see what experienced developer have to say about like this huge PR that is still going into React Native website, React Native documentation about new architecture. Looking through discussions, you can actually get this knowledge first. Because if you are waiting for it to suddenly appear on the website, you are like 2 months behind.
Yeah, that's true.
People are already using this knowledge from the discussions to port their libraries, to port their applications to the new architecture. But we will talk about the new architecture in the third point of our podcast today. Yeah, I think like broadly, that's all that happened. Not all that happened, but broadly. Also, we already touched on this, but we had our 5th conference, React Native EU.
That's true. That's true.
It was great. I like your talk. I liked most of the talks, and yeah, I feel like it was a very, very nice experience for me to join Callstack in June and then watch the conference with everyone.
And you presented it as well, so you know that. Thank you for presenting it.
Yeah. I had a small part there. Mike was the main host on the conference, but I helped.
You did, and you did a great job, I feel. And
Thank you.
I would love to mention that I enjoy virtual conferences. Like, I miss offline conferences and meeting people, but I feel that online conferences open the stage for a lot of people who normally wouldn't be able to maybe give a talk or even attend. And now we have a whole bunch of like online conferences and talks which are available for everyone, and it's really cutting edge knowledge that everybody can just access either for free or for a very small amount of money. And that's great. So I kind of hope that online conferences stay around even once we have offline conferences. I hope that there's always going to be like an online edition of the biggest conferences.
Yeah, like definitely. And I feel like online conferences evolve. So let's roll back like 2 years ago. The online conferences were a necessity,
Yeah.
but right now they're like default choice for some of the companies. I feel like it's somehow related to React Native, Next.js. It's not React Native, but it's in the React space. The
Yeah.
conference from Next.js was really high quality and really high production value. I
Yeah.
enjoyed it so much. Yeah.
React Conf, the same situation, like React Conf 2021 was very well prepared and very nice to watch. The GitHub, what was the GitHub Universe, I think, that's the
Yeah.
name of the conference.
This one was huge.
That
Like
was awesome.
the amount of topics they cover on GitHub, like their blog, I feel like it's updated like every day. They have something new
Yeah,
to show.
yeah, for sure.
But
for sure.
this just shows how much manpower can Microsoft bring to some project. Because like 3 years ago when GitHub was independent, let's say, not under the wing of Microsoft, they didn't do as many things as they do now. So
For sure.
I'm really hoping that Microsoft will still contribute to React Native.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
That was our first question. And the second one I asked everyone at Callstack was which library was the most useful for you in 2021? And well, like no surprise there. Everyone said React Navigation. Like
Yeah.
React Navigation.
For sure.
is
I was going
the
to say,
plug-
did you notice how many people mentioned React Navigation? It's like the go-to library that everybody, like almost every app needs a navigation, and almost everybody uses React Navigation.
Yeah, like I feel it's default now.
Yeah.
It is the default navigation for React Native. And not only, it works only on web, people. Go and check in on web. It works as well. I've used it.
Yeah. It's pretty great. And for everybody who's watching this and doesn't know, React Navigation is developed by Callstack as well.
Yeah,
And
like
by
the
our
main
own
contributor
Satya.
is Satya. Actually, it's a funny story. I was doing some preparation for some other podcast in like summer or something like that. I was going to talk about React Navigation actually, and I asked Satya, how should I introduce him as like founder of the project or like a core contributor? And he's like so humble that he said, "Oh, I'm just a dev there. Like I'm a contributor." And when you go to like a GitHub page for React Navigation, like 90 something % of the work is Satya. Like his contributions outpace every other so much that like I feel like it's a one-man show almost. So
yeah, I took part in a workshop about React Native Paper, by the way, another open source library by Callstack. And Satya was there. We were trying to plan migration for Material UI. And so we were like planning out tasks, and the main dev asked Satya, how much time do you think this task will take, or this task? And Satya was like, yeah, this will take 2 hours, this will take 3 hours, this will take 1 hour. And then we're like, no, wait, wait, yeah, seriously, it will take a week. Wait, it's not you who's going to be doing this. You're only in the planning phase.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's very, very smart, and he's a really, really great developer, very productive, and funny to talk to as well. So
Yeah, please join our team and talk with Sadia. He's great. Like,
yeah,
he is so humble person, like I mentioned before. Also, like 4 years ago when I started using React Native, React navigation, of course, like, yeah, let's use some navigation. This is the most popular one. Everyone says it's great. Let's use that
yeah,
one. And now it's 3 years after that, and I work with the core contributor, main contributor to this library.
nice.
And
And by the way, the library got so much better over the last 3 years. I mean, I was working on an app which was using like a V3, I think, or V4, and it kind of made me sad. Last year, I worked on that, and it
okay,
just made me sad. I was like, please just upgrade it.
I started from V2, I think. Okay, so this is like this is the most ubiquitous
For
library
sure.
there is. Uh, what else were people mentioning?
Well, they mentioned Repack a lot, for sure.
Yeah, this came out last year. So
Yeah.
I can say something about it. So this repack, like I said a few minutes ago, this repack allows developers of React Native to use Webpack in their project instead of Metro. Metro is the default bundler for React Native, but you can also use Webpack now. And Webpack, for those who know, they know that Webpack have a lot of plugins. Webpack has like a whole ecosystem that comes with it. And
Yeah.
what you can do with Webpack, you cannot do with Metro. And
Yeah.
this is a module federation and like splitting up in like several bundles. So
Mm.
this is something that is still in experimental phase. I think I might be wrong on this front, but I think Kuba said that he's waiting for this to happen next year. So
Mhm.
he knows.
Yeah.
And it's also developed here at Callstack by my friend from the team, Paweł Trysła, Zamotany. He's also very smart. Like I feel stupid compared to him. So that's that. Mm.
Yeah. You're not the only one, I bet. So,
Yeah, we have so many smart people in this company.
we do. It's impressive.
Next up, so we have React Navigation, we have Repack. People
Yeah.
also mentioned Reanimated too.
Yeah.
And I feel that this is a tricky one because Reanimated 2 we could use already in 2020. I feel like it was in beta
Yeah.
back then.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been in beta for a long time. It's like they really, I don't know, they wanted to make sure it's really good or something, but yeah, they were teasing us for a long time.
Yeah, and Reanimated 2 under the hood uses the new architecture from React Native. So they've used new architecture for I think 2 years now or even more. So this just shows how important it is to stay in the loop, not only with the newest blog posts, but also with like discussions on GitHub and like
Yeah.
tweets from important people in React Native space. I've learned that this year that you should follow tweets. Like tweets are much faster
Yeah,
source on information than like
for
blog posts
sure.
and newsletters.
For sure. Yeah. Twitter is a very good source of like up-to-date information on all sorts of libraries, like, and yeah.
So, dear listener, you should follow Ola. She's retweeting a lot of React Native information. You should
do.
follow Callstack for sure. You can follow me as well. I don't tweet as much as Ola, but if
Yeah,
we
and
have
I'm
if
pretty
we have
sure.
a new React Native show episode, I will tweet about that.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure Mike is the president on Twitter as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and as far as Reanimated is concerned, for everybody who's using React Navigation, Reanimated is actually a dependency on React Navigation. So whenever you use React Navigation and you're wondering what to do about your animations, you already have Reanimated in your app. So just go ahead and take advantage of that because you don't need to add any more dependencies. You already have it.
Yeah.
You just need to
Yeah,
write your
that is a
animations in
good
it.
tip, actually.
Yep. I know.
Okay, another library. I don't think it's a library actually, but this is a tool. It's a very prominent tool in React Native. Is Expo.
Yeah.
Yannick said that if he was to start learning programming or learning like mobile programming, he would choose Expo to do that. And I agree.
Yeah.
I wasn't a fan when I started it. When I started learning React Native, just because the company I joined didn't use it, and I had pretty solid knowledge of native platforms back then.
Mm-hmm.
But for someone who's coming from like a web background, Expo is doing so much good work in their ecosystem. You can deploy your Expo applications on the web as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and testing, deployment, building, testing, deployment, it's all very well managed. It's super easy. It's like you do everything on their website. You just click a few buttons and your app is ready to be tested. It's super impressive. I was lucky enough to be on a Twitter space with Jamin Holmgren from Infinite Red.
Native Radio.
And Infinite Red, and he said pretty much the same thing, that if he recommends, if anybody is starting like building a new app in React Native, they should start with Expo. I mean, Evan Bacon was on that same Twitter space, so maybe he was just being nice.
Yeah.
But no, I'm just kidding. I'm pretty sure he was being honest, that he actually recommends just using Expo for pretty much everything.
Yeah.
And one thing that changed that I like about Expo, something that changed is that at first I remember when Expo was existing, you had to decide upfront if you're using Expo or not. And if in the middle of your project you decided to abandon Expo, you had to eject, and it was like a whole bunch of warnings. Once you eject, you can never come back. It was so scary.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that changed this year, that like with the new Expo, you don't have to eject anymore.
I'm not sure, just
Like,
because I don't use Expo on the daily basis. I use it sometimes when I do like a workshop for new people in React Native. I'd use Expo, but for my own personal project, I still have this like, I'd rather do it natively, but I see more and more benefits of using Expo like just from the scratch of your application.
Yeah.
So Expo has this like great thing called unimodules, and I know that like the mechanism changed this year somehow, for better for sure.
Yeah.
But what unimodules allows you, unimodules are actually like external libraries, we can say that, but you know that they're maintained well because they're from Expo. So you don't have to like look at the star count. You don't have to go through the GitHub issues before you import something in your project. You just, if you need something and you know that the unimodule exists that does this thing, you can just import it
and be confident that's gonna work. Yeah.
And also you can also use unimodules without Expo in your project.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's that about Expo.
Yeah.
Maybe we can talk some more about libraries that exist, that happened this year, or just exist, but weren't mentioned on this short mashup of interviews.
Yeah.
So my own personal pick is React Freeze.
Okay.
This is such a magical library. This is from Software Mansion.
Okay.
The company that is behind React Screens as well. And if you use React Screens, you have React Freeze internally, no worries. You don't have to like import it. But what React Freeze does is it allows you to get advantage of the suspense React mechanism.
Okay.
It allows you to opt out of rendering some part of the React tree by demand, basically.
Okay.
So you just wrap your component in this React freeze component, and it just works. And funny thing is, the library, like the main file, the most important file in the library, this is like 50 lines long. So
You're
you can,
kidding.
you can
Wow.
actually like re-implement it yourself, and in there you can like find out how the suspense really work.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Another library that I want to give a huge shout out to is React Native Web. This is the one I use most often, apart from React Native. I include React Native Web in almost all of my personal hobby projects, just to make sure that I can run my application everywhere.
Everywhere. Yeah, yeah. It's a magical wand. It's a magic wand, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can just run it everywhere.
Yeah. So this is also in line with the blog post from React Native, when they talk about like many platforms vision, and they actually like mentioned React Native Web there as well. So we have React Native Windows, React Native macOS, and we have React Native Web, and we have React Native for mobile platforms, and more to come.
And yeah, pretty soon we'll have like React Native fridge and React Native vacuum cleaner.
Yeah.
Why not?
Do you have any other library that you want to mention in this section?
The library I use, which wasn't mentioned, is React Native testing library. Not much changed in it last year, but something that I don't know if everybody knows, but it's actually this library is kind of like blessed by Kent Dodds, the author of the React testing library. There's a very good talk on this topic, which was at React Native EU, I think 2019, by Michał Pierzchała. He talks about how they were in contact with Ken Dodds. So anyway, that was like a couple of years back, but still to this day, I use this testing library and I appreciate it a lot. It's very well maintained, and it works like a charm.
Yeah, and like on this topic, let's give a huge shout out to Michał Pierzchała, who just got promoted from expert developer at Callstack to head of technology for React Native at Callstack. So he is our boss. So Michał, we love you. You do a great job with the testing library. Please keep it up.
Yeah, if you have time.
If you have time, right? Like, I think he'll still develop stuff. Like he's very good developer, and he likes what he does.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think it's time that we move on to our third question. And the third question I asked our interviewees.
Yeah, I think that's the right word.
Wróćmy. So I think it's time we move on to our third and final question from the survey I sent to all Callstack employees. And the third question I asked was, what are you looking forward to seeing React Native wise in the next year, so 2022?
Yeah.
And like overwhelmingly.
Overwhelmingly. Yeah.
Yeah. The answer was new architecture, stabilization of the new architecture, new docs.
Documentation. That seems like a big pain point that we're all kind of waiting. We know that there's this new great architecture, but we don't really know what to do with it yet.
Yeah, and I feel that when this happens, like when we have these docs and when we have our libraries migrated, when we have our applications migrated, this is like a new start for React Native as a whole. Like this is a complete break from what was before to what comes after. And I even heard that maybe React Native will be like finally at number one, like not 0.66 but 1.0.0, like
Oh,
very
really?
important.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's a big plays.
I mean, this is just a number, but it might just show how mature the framework become in like 5 years of its existence.
Yeah, you may say it's just a number, but if you take into consideration what happened with Angular 2 was like a completely different framework that people pretty much abandoned. I mean, not everybody, but it lost a lot of its popularity when they did the version 2, which
Mhm.
I really hope is not going to happen for React Native. I don't think it's going to happen for React Native because we're going. As you said, this is like a big change, but it doesn't change how we're gonna still be writing the apps. It's just gonna
Yes.
change that they're the apps that result in what we write are gonna be faster, better, smoother. So all good.
Yeah, so I feel like the re-architecture will just happen under the hood.
Yeah.
Like you said, we'll still write the same React Native application using the same JavaScript and the same React, but under the hood, the renderer will be different. We'll
Yeah.
use Fabric instead of whatever we use right now. Yeah, and I think the most challenging point in new architecture is actually for library creators. So right now we have animation library that is already in new architecture. We have camera library, which is already in new architecture.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to seeing more and more of this kind of changes.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I,
Me personally, I'm looking forward to something not dev related. I'm looking forward to more and more companies adopting React Native. I feel it could be sort of a badge of honor for any medium, big company, or I don't know, whatever, small company as well, that they can be proud that they produce an app which is published to iPhones and Android phones, and that it works seamlessly. I'm really looking forward to more and more great apps built with React Native.
yeah, like definitely.
Yeah, like,
What I'm
remember?
looking for.
Do you remember Clubhouse? I don't know how much there was an app. They only had an iOS app.
iOS application, yeah.
Yeah, and so they started out. They had the website and only the iOS app, and people were like pretty much angry at the company for doing such a stupid thing and not have an Android application. And if they used React Native, they wouldn't be in that situation.
Yeah, and right now the Clubhouse functionality is basically ported to Twitter and to other like spaces.
Yeah, yeah, they kind of like died out pretty much.
Yeah, and maybe that's because they were just on the iOS. So
it's possible.
if you have a startup idea, this dear listener, hire Callstack will make you a great React Native application, and your React Native application will run everywhere. I mean everywhere. We'll put it on your fridges.
Yeah.
We'll put it in your microwaves.
Yeah.
In your cars even.
Yeah, for sure.
Hit us up.
Future.
We're ready.
Yeah.
We're ready for a challenge.
Yeah.
So about that, like in the new 2022, I'm looking forward to seeing new colleagues in Callstack.
Oh, you can hear a dog barking.
Yeah.
What's his name?
My dog's name is Yeti.
Yeti. And as far as I know, he looks like a Yeti a little bit, doesn't he?
He does. He does.
Cool.
He's very white.
That's nice.
Do you have any other picks for like future React Native topics?
Not really for React Native. A little bit for like the broader React space and the state management libraries in the React space, because I see a lot of tutorials and courses titled "Simple App with React and Redux." So I'm hoping that maybe 2022 will be the year when people will read more about React's context and hooks, and learn about other state management libraries, because I feel that Redux, when it was created, it was a great solution. But a couple of years have passed and people are still using it, but it's not the best solution for, like, I mean, it's not the only solution. And as of today, it's very often not the best solution, because we have context and hooks in React. And I would just love to see more React and React Native devs embrace hooks and the React mindset, and just trying to work with what is built in with React, instead of just jumping straight to Redux because that's what all the cool kids are doing or whatever.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of Redux from the start. Like, I'm a MobX fanboy
Okay.
myself, and I love using MobX.
Mobix, it was a great response to Redux and people who didn't like Redux. Also, check out other solutions like Mobix, like XState, which also takes a different approach, Recoil, or even I think that React Query should be considered in the state management space, because you can have all your local state in your React, built-in context and hooks and everything. And if you need anything from the server, you can just use React Query and have your app built like that as well.
Yeah. So let's schedule that for our new episode of the React Native show about state managers in React Native and React.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to talk about. Yeah.
I feel like we've exhausted all the topics that we have today about React Native in 2021 and what we are hoping for in 2022. Ola, thank you so much for joining me on this call. It was great to have you. I'm looking at my calendar. When can I have you next time? So
thank you.
See you then. And I wish you and our listeners all the best in 2022, React Native wise and not.
And thank you so much for having me. It was really a lot of fun to be here, and I hope to be here again.
Thanks. See you. Bye.
Bye.